Have you ever stumbled upon a verse in an ancient text that just stops you in your tracks? One that feels so out of place, so mysterious, it's like a doorway to a forgotten world. For me, and for countless others, that verse is Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. Who were these sons of God? And who were the Nephilim, these heroes of old, men of renown? This single passage has sparked millennia of debate, wonder, and some of the most fascinating theories you can imagine. Today, we're diving deep into one of the Bible's greatest mysteries, the story of fallen angels, human love, and the giants who walked the earth. Let's start with the key players, the sons of God. Who were they? This is the core of the controversy. One major interpretation, and perhaps the most dramatic, is that these were divine beings, angels. Proponents of this view point to other ancient texts, like the Book of Enoch, which wasn't included in most Bibles but was widely read in the ancient world. The Book of Enoch goes into incredible detail, naming the leaders of these rebellious angels who, captivated by the beauty of human women, descended to earth, took wives, and taught humanity forbidden knowledge. This act was seen as a profound corruption, a mixing of the divine and the mortal that was never meant to be. The offspring of these unions were the Nephilim. The word itself is often translated as giants, but its Hebrew root, nephol, means to fall. So, were they the fallen ones? Those who cause others to fall, or simply literally giants? Ancient accounts certainly seem to suggest a physical size that was awe-inspiring and terrifying. Think about it. Beings born from a celestial father and a human mother, what would they be like? The text calls them heroes of old, men of renown, suggesting they were powerful, famous, and perhaps even ruled as kings or demigods in the antediluvian world. This interpretation paints a picture of a prehistoric world that sounds more like a Greek myth than a Sunday school lesson, a world of demigods, forbidden love, and cosmic rebellion. It suggests that the great flood described just a few verses later wasn't just a response to human wickedness, but a divine reset button to cleanse the earth of this unnatural hybrid lineage. It was a way to purify the human gene pool from this angelic interference. But hold on, not everyone agrees with this fallen angel theory. Another significant interpretation offers a much more grounded, less supernatural explanation. This view suggests that the sons of God were not angels at all, but rather the righteous descendants of Seth, Adam, and Eve's third son. In this reading, the daughters of humans were the descendants of the unrighteous Cain. So, the story isn't about cosmic rebellion, but about social and spiritual decay. It's a cautionary tale about the godly line of Seth intermarrying with the worldly line of Cain. Their union, a mixing of faith and godlessness, led to a generation that was morally and spiritually corrupt. The Nephilim in this context might not be literal giants in stature, but giants in sin and rebellion against God. They were tyrants, bullies, men who became famous for their power and wickedness, not for their righteousness. This interpretation keeps the story entirely on the human plane. It avoids the tricky theology of angels procreating with humans and aligns more neatly with the theme of growing human sinfulness leading up to the flood. It becomes a powerful metaphor for what happens when a faithful community compromises its values and blends with a culture that has turned its back on divine principles. The result is a society so corrupt that it needs to be washed clean. So we have two compelling but starkly different views. One involves a cosmic drama with fallen angels and hybrid giants. The other is a deeply human story about the dangers of spiritual compromise. Which one is right? The truth is, the text is ambiguous, and scholars have been debating it for thousands of years. The language is just poetic and ancient enough to leave room for both possibilities. But the story of the Nephilim doesn't end with the flood. Remember Genesis 6:4? It says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward." That little phrase, "and also afterward," is explosive. It implies that somehow the Nephilim or their lineage survived the flood. How could this be? When the Israelite spies scout out the land of Canaan centuries after the flood, they come back with a terrifying report. They say, "We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." Suddenly, the Nephilim are back. The Anakim, the Rephaim, even the famous Goliath who fought David. All are described in ways that suggest gigantic stature. Was this a second incursion of angels? Or did the genetic trait somehow survive the flood, perhaps through one of Noah's daughters-in-law? This post-flood appearance of giants adds another layer of mystery. It connects the primeval past with the later history of Israel, making the Nephilim a persistent threat, a remnant of a corrupt ancient world that the Israelites had to conquer to claim their promised land. These weren't just tall people. They were seen as the monstrous legacy of a primordial sin. The idea of the Nephilim has captured the human imagination for a reason. It taps into our fascination with giants, with myths of gods and mortals, and with the idea of a lost, magical past. It's a story that has influenced everything from fantasy novels and video games to wild modern-day conspiracy theories about ancient aliens and hidden bloodlines. Why does this ancient mystery still resonate so deeply? Perhaps it's because it speaks to a fundamental human question. What are the limits of our nature? The story of the Nephilim, whether you see it as a literal account of angel-human hybrids or a metaphor for spiritual corruption, is a powerful warning. It's a story about the dangers of crossing boundaries that were never meant to be crossed, of ambition that leads to ruin, and of a corruption so deep it requires a world-altering event to fix. It forces us to confront the idea that there may be more to our world and our history than we can easily explain. It's a sliver of the strange and the supernatural, embedded in one of the world's most foundational texts, reminding us that even in familiar stories, there are still deep mysteries waiting to be explored. What do you think? Were the Nephilim the giant offspring of fallen angels, or were they simply powerful human tyrants? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the distant past. If you enjoyed unraveling this ancient mystery, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating stories. We'll see you in the next video.